Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the DeSoto County Board of County Commissioners Chambers, December 6, 2023, 9:30 a.m. for our Peace River, Manasota Regional Water Supply Authority Board of Directors meeting. This time, if you would, check your phones, make sure you got your phone silenced, or you don't get embarrassed when it goes off in the middle of the meeting and I have to look at you funny. So, if you would, let's rise for the invocation, followed by the pledge. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today, Lord. We just thank you for us being able to meet here today and to handle the business at hand, dear Heavenly Father. Lord, we thank you for our men and women that protect us and serve us at home and abroad. Lord, just keep your hand of protection upon them at all times as they do their best to protect us and keep us safe. Lord, we just thank you for everything you do for us. I ask these things now in Jesus' holy name. Amen. Amen. Flag behind us here. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everybody for coming today. And we won't have any host remarks this morning. Ms. Hines really hates us coming to the DeSoto County so bad that she scheduled a root canal today. So she won't be here to give us any open comments. So basically, y'all all know you're welcome here, and we thank everybody for coming. Have public comments this morning. Chris Charette, name and address for the record.
Good morning. Good morning. Chris Sherrick, 4080 Middlesex Place, Sarasota, Florida. Just wanted to invite everybody to our joint professional society social that we're having tomorrow night. It's at Stottlemeyer's on Fruitville Road from 5:30 to 7:30. The entry fee is a toy for tots. Last year I collected all the toys and brought them over here in the sleigh and delivered them to the old schoolhouse on 17th there for distribution here in DeSoto County. So I just thought it'd be a really neat opportunity for everybody to come have some food and drinks and fun with everyone, and then also, of course, benefiting the Toys for Tots here locally. Thanks.
Thanks, sir. Any other public comments? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to our awards and recognition. Item number 1, Mr. Richards.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Happy holidays to everybody. And by sleigh, Chris means his Tesla. He dropped them off. First of all, thank you very much for giving us a few minutes. It's always great to recognize staff and honor their service here at the authority. So appreciate y'all giving us a few minutes to do that. Today we have 2 service awards and 2 retirements I want to talk about. First up, we have Kelly Bailey. Kelly, you come up. Kelly's our admin assistant 3 at the water plant. She's been with us since November 15th of 2018, so it's her 5 years of service. She was born in Pennsylvania, and like everyone else, migrated to Charlotte County, and where she lives she lived there with her daughter Emmy. A quiet, peaceful life, enjoying the outdoors and travel, occasionally a good movie, until recently, when she recently got married to her husband Devin, and Devin's 3 children. So now she's a mom of 4, Emmy, Mason, Liam, and Lexana. And if that isn't enough, they decided to adopt 4 rescue dogs as well. So going from a house of 2 to a house of 8, 9, 10, something like that. So and Kelly says, quote, she has a rescue problem, so that's why she went for the 4 dogs. Kelly does an outstanding job for us at the facility. She wears many hats. In addition to processing nearly all the invoices for the authority for chemicals and all the equipment that we use and purchase, she's just the go-to person at the plant. The phrase, go ask Kelly, has become a common phrase because nobody knows where anything is but Kelly, so you have to ask her where stuff is. So She's also expanding her duties. She wants to learn HR. She's taken some HR classes and wants to be the HR resource for the staff at the plant. She's done a great job learning that. So just want to say congratulations and thank you for 5 years. It's been a pleasure working with you. And we have this little token of our appreciation here. So thank you. Next up, we have a familiar face, Terry Holcomb. Terry, if you would. Or as her plaque says, Terry Holocomb. Apparently, a typo on that one.
You had to point that out?
I did. She pointed it out to me. So Terry's been with the authority also for 5 years. She actually started the same day as Kelly on the 15th of November. Currently serving as our Director of Engineering and Projects. Prior to that, she spent 20 years working in the private sector for consulting firms, doing design, construction, and engineering services for water, wastewater utilities all over the state of Florida. And she was a regulator for 5 years in Wisconsin, so she has that background as well. She's a graduate of University of South Florida.
Go Bulls.
There you go. Bachelor's in Civil Engineering, and also a member of the Environmental Engineering Society Advisory Board at the school. She's also a registered professional engineer and devotes many, many hours being actively engaged in the Florida section of the American Water Works Association, currently serving as our section's secretary. Her and her husband Donnie, who is also a professional engineer, are longtime residents of Sarasota. They have 2 daughters, Taylor and Victoria. Now, having both parents as engineers and USF grads was a strong influence on the girls, as you might expect when they choose their careers. So, of course, Taylor is pursuing a career in the Army as second lieutenant, and Victoria is studying marine biology. So,
Neither an engineer.
no engineer. But Terry's passion for her work shows through every day. Her work ethic and sense of humor make it a pleasure to work with her these past 5 years. Through her leadership, she has shepherded the CIP project that you're going to hear about today and kept them on track. And the authority has actually started construction on 2 of our pipelines using an alternative delivery method, progressive design build, which we had never done before. Terry brought that to us and has made that work, and just a strong leader for the authority. Just want to say thank you very much for your leadership. Thanks. Mrs. Holocomb. There you go. Next up, we have 2 retirements. We have first John Ramsey. John, would you come up, please? And both these folks you might recognize from our February meeting. They both received their, John received his 20 years service award, and Mike, who's going to be up next, received his 15 year. So John's currently our operations specialist too. Been with the authority for 21 years. He's going to be retiring here on December 31st, so we wish him well. John holds a Class A water treatment plant license, and he has dedicated his career to the water treatment field. He's been in positions of plant operator, distribution system operator, and now currently he's our operations specialist, which does all the collections for sampling and make sure that we meet regulatory compliance at the plant, and he's done an outstanding job in that for the past 6 years. So I asked John what he's going to do in retirement. This is in no particular order. He said, look forward to not getting up early and coming to work, was number 1. And then this next one I have to read carefully, okay, so, because I know his wife, Darlene. Enjoy doing things I like to do, or Darlene's honeydew list. So you're gonna have to explain that one when you get home, I guess, but, he says they may move out of Florida. He's tired of the hurricanes and wants to see other parts of the country, but he also enjoys working on his cars, enjoying going to races and travel shows and car museums, things like that. So, John, it's just been a pleasure working with you. Outstanding career, and we wish you much success in your retirement. And we have a certificate for you. This can be redeemed for a real gift that hasn't come in yet. We'll get that to you before the end of the month.
I hate when that happens.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Mike Chell, who's our operations manager. Mike, come on. Mike's been with the authority a little over 15 years. He served as a shift lead operator, our operations supervisor, and now our operations manager. Overall, he's got over 40 years experience in the water treatment field, both in Minnesota, where he worked at a treatment plant for 22 years, and then he's been down here in Florida for the past over 18 years. And like John, he has dedicated his career to the water treatment industry. Mike is truly the eyes and ears of the facility. He takes pride in making sure that the plant runs 24/7 nonstop. We've been through 2 hurricanes together, Irma and Ian. The plant ran without fail through both storms. We never had an issue. And Mike just takes pride in making sure the water comes out of the plant at the best, highest quality it can, and nonstop, 24/7. So when Mike came on board in 2008 with the authority, we were treating 16 MGD. Today we're doing 31.4 MGD, so we've doubled our treatment capacity under your tenure. And I want to say, I just looked it up, we've never had a boil water notice under your leadership, never had any kind of monitoring or sampling issues, and no regulatory violations of any kind. So thank you for that. Mike and his wife April live in Northport. They have 5 grandkids. And I like it when they say grandkids. They don't say how many kids they have anymore. It's all grandkids, right? So I think you have 2 kids, right? 2 kids, right? Ranging age 6 to 12. And he plans on spending time with them, relaxing and traveling and just seeing the country a little bit in his retirement. So Mike, it's been a pleasure working with you. Really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. Next up, item number 2, board recognitions, Mr. Coates.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, board members. For the 5th consecutive year, the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada has awarded a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting to the Water Supply Authority. This award is for our annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2022. So the Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in government accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by government and its management. Ann Lee and her staff work hard to prepare this report each year, and each year for the past 5 it's been an award winner. The work that wins these awards is fostered by a clear board direction on the mission of this agency and your support for authority staff. So congratulations to Ann and her staff and to you as board members on this achievement. And we have the certificate. Ann, there you go. So it's the one from last year. Is it inside?
Yeah, they sent us a little medallion because the GFOA is a little frugal, so we get a medallion to stick on our award for 10 years. So.
Yeah. Anyway, so congratulations.
Alrighty, that brings us to our consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve? Okay, motion by Commissioner Moran, do I hear a second? Second. Got a second by Ty Goodwin, the runner, on here with Commissioner Cruz. All in favor, say
I had a discussion on 2 of the consent.
aye. You did?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Which 2?
Item 7 and 10.
Okay.
Item 7 is in regards to the temporary construction trailer due to hurricane damage. I did not see in the report if the insurance was going to cover any part of those costs. And then when I go to consent item 10, it talks about Hurricane Ian recovery, and there is an element in there for roof repairs. I'm not sure if the 2 are related.
Okay.
On the Item 7, the temporary construction trailer for the Water Resources Office. The Water Resources building that we occupy out there now is owned by the Southwest Florida Water Management District. And they did not have an insurance on it. So there is no insurance money for that. So there's no insurance reimbursement for the construction.
Okay, so consent item 10 then is a roofing element that has nothing to do with roof repairs in the building because it's not the authority's.
Exactly. Consent item 10 is a lot of other buildings that we have on site where we had roof damage and that damage has been repaired or those roofs have been replaced. Part of that will be, most of that will be covered by insurance.
Our policy didn't cover continuing operations or anything like that that might have covered some of these things?
Hands are insurance agent.
Ann Lee for the record. As to your question, Commissioner, we do have coverage for continuing operations. However, that's only on owned property. As Mr. Coates just mentioned, the ranch house building is owned by Swift Mud. So they did not have insurance coverage on it. Therefore, we could not file a claim. And as we do not have ownership of it, we could not embark at adding this to our existing FEMA claim.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do we have a leasing arrangement with Swift Mud for the building? As a
Not
landlord
a
tenant
traditional lease. There is an agreement that allows us use of that facility.
but there's no written agreement.
Yes and no. There isn't an agreement where monies are exchanged hands. It's just a allowance of us using the facility. It doesn't have any provisions in there about who needs to have insurance coverage or et cetera on the building.
Okay, well, that's what if there was an agreement typically, even if it's non-monetary, there'd be an agreement regarding liability, who's responsible if something happens in the building, slip and fall, something like that. There's nothing like that in terms of liability either?
Not as far as I recollect on the agreement that we have outstanding with Swiftman, which I believe is 20 or so plus years old. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, typically, Mr. Chair, there's not a problem until there's a problem. I mean, the liability end of it now, that I understand, that could be a real big problem. I probably would want to in the future, if we're gonna have arrangements like that, look at those insurance policies and make sure that at least we have coverage for our people that are in the building. If something happens, who's responsible for what?
We do have liability coverage for injuries. However, the structure is different because the structure goes with the ownership of the property, but we could definitely embark on those conversations with Swiftmud.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
So we are covered for a liability issues if some of our employees in that building as of right now.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so everything's good with 7 to 10?
Yes, sir.
Good. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All in favor, like sign. Motion carries 4-0. Okay. Our regular agenda, item number 1, Mr. Richard.
Good morning again, Mr. Chair, Richard Anderson for the record. Item 1, as usual, is our water supply conditions report. And this, as usual, this time of year, we kind of do an end of the year wrap up to talk about demands throughout the year and water supply conditions throughout the year. So I'm going to start out if this will work. There we go. Taking a look at the annual rainfall. As you can see, we've, as everywhere else in the basin, we've had a rain shortfall this year. Typically we get
We're getting all turned on up here.
we're all good.
Not by you, but I mean. I just wanted to get that from out.
I'm going to have a hard time getting that image out of my head.
Yeah, I would too.
Are we good to go, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The chairman's breaking in the new guy showing up.
Okay, well, I'm going to start over. So anyway, rainfall this fiscal year, as with everywhere else, we had a shortfall in the Peace River Basin. As you can see, we average about 52 inches a year. We had 43 inches in the basin. And you know, pretty dry the first part of the year through April. Our saving grace really was Hurricane Idalia that came through and gave us a glancing blow, but it put a lot of rain into the Peace River Basin up around Bartow and Lakeland. So we've had good flow in the river really ever since Idalia came through, as you'll see here in a minute. This is the river flows. So when there's no rain, there's really not a lot of river flows. You can see through most of the year we've had under 2,000 CFS, which is really unusual. A lot of times we'll spike up into the 4,000, 5,000, and 6,000 CFS range during the summer months. September 23, we did get up to 4,000. That was Idalia coming through, and we are still seeing the effects of that right now. We're still able to draw about 20 MGD off the river because of that rain event. So river withdrawals, kind of a typical pattern here that we see every year, pumping water when we have it available in the river. Obviously springtime, March, April, May, no water to pump. We're relying on the reservoir for our supply, and then we go ahead and fill it back up in the rainy season, June, July, August, September. This is a 5-year, 6-year snapshot of the surface water storage, just to give you an idea of the diurnal pattern. As you can see, we use the storage every year. Pretty average year this year, we got down to 4 billion gallons, I'm sorry, in the reservoir. So despite the lack of rain, we were able to keep the reservoir fairly full and maintain storage. Here's a quick look at ASR storage. The blue bar is the actual quantity that's in the ground. The red bar is what we consider usable storage, which is about 50 to 60% of the actual amount in the system. So as you can see, we have about 8.6 billion gallons in the ground, and we have about 5 billion as usable storage. Now we'll take a look at water production. Again, this is for the year. The authority system, we averaged almost 31 MGD for the year. As you can see, 30.89 MGD. York County and city facilities produced 54 MGD for a total of 85 MGD region-wide. Now, almost 4 of that was delivered by Manatee County to their consecutives on the coast, so the authority total usage was just over 81 MGD. That is the first time we've ever delivered more than 81 as a region. Last year, our number was 76.2, so almost 5 million gallons more was delivered this year than in 2022. I'm going to go through each customer county by county or city by city. Start out with Charlotte County. For the year, Charlotte used 12.25 from the authority out of your allocation of 16.1, which is about 76% of your available allocation. You also produced 0.74 from the burnt storage facility for a total of almost 13 MGD produced or used in your system throughout the year. The bottom chart shows on a month-by-month basis what you used from the authority. This is just the authority allocation. So the red bar is the 16.1 allocation, and the blue bar is your average for the year. So again, you averaged about 12.25. Your peak month was in March of 13.67. So just to give you a perspective of where you are compared to your allocation. DeSoto County, DeSoto had a 723 or 0.723 allocation. That included your allocation of 0.675 plus some water that you purchased out of the pool this year to use. Your total demand was 0.74, so you actually use a little bit more than your total allocation, but right at 100% of available is what you guys used. You also produced 0.36 from the DeSoto Correctional Facility. Total used was 1.1 MGD average. And again, your peak month was in May, and that was 0.93 from the authority. So Manatee County, obviously Manatee doesn't take any water from the authority. Just, this graph basically shows what you used within the county and what you sold or donated to other counties, including Sarasota County. So Manatee County self-supply was 39.3 .65, which again was used within your customer base. Exported 3.8, excuse me, to Sarasota County, and another 3.8 to your consecutives. So the total production for the year was 47.27. And your peak month was March and April were almost identical, right at 52 MGD produced at the facility. And Sarasota County also used water from the pool this year. Normal allocation is 15.06. You used an additional, or purchased an additional 1.85 out of the pool. So your total allocation for the year was 16.91. And out of that you used 16.54 from the authority, or 98% of that allocation. Imported again 3.8 from Manatee County, and your self-supply was 3.68 from your facilities. Total was just over 24 million gallons a day average for the year. And your peak month was July, actually, which is kind of unusual, but you were 20.12 from the authority in July. And finally, City of Northport. Northport used 1.37 from the authority and self-supplied 2.07 for a total of 3.45. And their peak month was in April at 3.51. Now when we roll all those numbers up and look at it on a regional basis, as you can see, the total authority customer usage, like I mentioned, was 81.21. Again, that's 5 full MGD more than 2022. That was 76.2. And then customers and the consecutives combined was right at 85 MGD. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Board members, y'all have any questions? Mr. Richard?
No, thank you.
You've done a good job, Richard.
Thank you.
Item number 2, Ms. Terry.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Terry Holcomb with authority staff, good morning. Item number 2, the CMAR agreement with Archer Western for the PR3 pumping and conveyance facilities is an action item, and there will be a motion at the conclusion of the presentation for board consideration and approval. So this morning's presentation will begin with a brief PR3 project update. We will review the procurement strategy or delivery methods recommended to meet the project schedule, go over the CMAR's scope and fee, provide an overview of the current grant funding opportunities that we've secured to date, and then close with the proposed delivery schedule. So I just really wanted to kind of touch on the surface water expansion project as a whole so everyone understands what we're talking about today. The surface water supply expansion project consists of 2 key expansions at the Peace River facility. It's the expansion of our raw water storage facilities, the reservoir, and the expansion at the water treatment plant to expand our treatment capacity. Those 2 expansions together equal the surface water supply expansion project. This will yield up to an additional 18 million gallons per day of water supply to the region. And today's presentation is really focusing on the PR3 project, that reservoir component. So, a little bit of the project update. How did we get to where we are today? In 2019, the authority secured the water use permit that allowed us to have additional withdrawals from the Peace River. In 2020, we completed our Integrated Regional Water Supply Master Plan update, which indicated that we would need new water supply to meet regional demands by 2030. That was a 10-year window that we had, and a large project like the Surface Water Expansion Project, which was supported by both the Water Management District and their Regional Water Supply Plan and the authority's Integrated Regional Water Supply Plan, would take about 10 years to bring online. So we started the planning process for the PR3 project, and it began with a feasibility and siting study in 2021. That feasibility and siting study really just kind of set the groundwork, making sure that the property on the R.D. Griffin Reserve was suitable for siting that 3rd reservoir. After the feasibility and siting study was complete and the recommendation to site the reservoir on the RV Griffin Reserve was made, we moved forward into the preliminary design phase. That began in early March of 2022. That was about an 18-month project, and we just concluded in September, and there were 3 key components of the preliminary design scope. That consisted of the 30% design documents, the third-party review, which was a requirement of our cooperative funding agreement with the Water Management District, and the submittal of the environmental resources permit. So the 30% design documents were submitted in March of 23, consisted of the basis of design report, all of the design plans for the reservoir, the pump stations, and all the conveyance piping. The third-party review was completed in June, and the Water Management District moved forward with supporting the project into the final design phase. And the ERP application was submitted to the Water Management District for their review in September. So the preliminary design phase was complete, and I'm happy to say that that phase of design was 100% paid for through the Resilient Florida Grant Program. So now we're moving into the final design phase. The board approved the contract with the design consultant in October, and there's, again, 3 key milestones in the final design phase. That's the development of the design documents. We're doing both a 60% design for the pumping and conveyance facilities and 100% design for the reservoir itself. There's also the permitting efforts to work through the regulatory agencies' questions, requirements to actually secure the environmental resources permit, and doing the cost estimates for the project as it moves through those design milestones at the 60%, 90%, and 100% design. So let's take a look. I just want to remind you, why are we moving forward with this procurement strategy of the construction management at-risk delivery method? Now, when we talk about delivery methods, we're talking about how does the authority procure the design and construction phase services through the procurement process. Now, when we look at the components of the PR3 project, the pump station, the pipelines, those costs are really driven by the materials of construction and market timing. We've got a lot of piping, pumps, valves, electrical, mechanical equipment. Those prices in the past few years have been very volatile depending upon how the market runs. So we really would like to have a contractor engage in a collaborative discussion with the design engineer to help advise on those materials of construction, give us a better feel of the market conditions so that we can hit the market at the right time and really have a good understanding of those costs for those items. For that reason, staff recommended to the board that we move forward with a construction management at-risk collaborative delivery method for those components of the PR3 project. That consists of both of the pump stations, the river pump station and intake, and the reservoir pump station, which sends water back to the water treatment facility, as well as all the large diameter conveyance piping that connects all of the new facilities to our existing assets at the Peace River facility. The reservoir, however, not a lot of materials here, right? It's a lot of earth moving. So not a lot of opportunity for some of that value engineering, identifying some of the materials of construction. The footprint's really been set in the preliminary design phase. So we really feel as though going the traditional design, bid, build, having contractors bid on the construction of the reservoir project will really bring the best value to our members and customers and keeping that cost low. So we're looking to go with the construction management at risk delivery method for the PR3 and the components there, and then taking the design to 100% and bidding out the reservoir as a traditional design bid build project. So let's take a look at our construction management at risk firm's scope and fee for what we consider to be the phase 1 services. And just for an understanding of the difference between an agreement on a construction management at risk, we have 2 key components of the agreement. We've got the phase 1 services, which is all the pre-construction services, that early engagement that we want the contractor looking at the project to do, value engineering, constructability reviews, identify the risks, whether it's risk to schedule or cost. And then the phase 2 is after the contractor gives us a guaranteed maximum price and a schedule. The owner then looks at that cost and schedule, and then we move forward into the phase 2 portion of the contract. So today, we're really just talking about the phase 1 services, and in this case, the phase 1 package 1A. Because we're at such an early part in the design, we really want that contractor engagement in identifying some of the value engineering opportunities. We want them looking at some of the long lead items, how is that going to affect our schedule. We don't have quite enough information pulled together for them to pull a cost estimate together at this time moving into phase 2, so we've kind of got this package 1A. We envision coming back to the board probably in June with a package 1B, still the pre-construction phase services package, but really then focusing on that guaranteed maximum price development. So the scope of services in the package 1A is really focusing on getting the owner, designer, and CMAR together to review the design assumptions that have been made up to the 30%, and also identifying the owner or customer's priorities with respect to equipment, preferences on operations. So really a collaborative discussion during this first phase between the contractor or the CMAR and the designer and the owner. So you can see the first 2 tasks cover the general project management aspects of the services and the workshops to complete the value engineering, constructability, risk, schedule, and cost reviews. Task 3 covers scheduling. So we're looking at identification of risks to maintaining that schedule, or what we consider to be kind of those critical path items. Is it permitting? Is it the purchase of some of these long lead items? What are some of those risks to meeting that schedule? Now, task 4, these are some of the things that we've asked the contractor, and one of the benefits that we really see with having that early contractor engagement, we have the ability to ask our CMAR to look at those water supply projects that we have currently in the design phases. So we're asking them to look at the costs that were developed for the water treatment plant expansion. Our owner's agent completed a 30% design or the design criteria package for the water treatment plant expansion. We'd love to have the contractor put eyes on that cost estimate and give us their cost estimate as well. So we've got the construction firm looking at it from their perspective as opposed to the design engineer's perspective. Same thing with the brackish groundwater RO plant. We have that running parallel with the surface water expansion project. We've asked the CMAR team to take a look at the 30% designs that Carollo Engineers is developing for that project, give us a constructability review and a cost estimate of their design as well. And then finally, the PR3 project. We've got a cost estimate for that at the 30% design from the engineer's design. We really want that contractor's perspective. They've got a great cost estimating team, kind of have their pulse on the market right now. So when we have those costs all delivered, the board will have an apples to apples comparison between these water supply projects from a construction team that's looked at that. So a little more certainty in those costs. So task 4 is one of the big drivers, and I think one of the benefits of having that CMAR team on board. Task 5 is all of the materials we're going to lean on the CMAR to develop as we move through this phase 1 services. We're going to have presentations to your professional staff. We're going to have presentations to the board. So a little bit of workshops and helping us develop some of those materials. And then task 6 is for coordination with our owner's agent. Right now, we're looking to secure our owner's agent in looking at an overall master electrical plan for our facilities. We have several large projects kind of ongoing right now, each of which independently is looking at the electrical needs. This includes the PR3 project, the water treatment plant expansion, and more recently, we're looking at possibly doing some solar power generation. So we really would like to get an electrical master plan done so that we can ensure that we're moving forward holistically as these projects are progressing. So we've asked the CMAR to collaborate with our owner's agents in developing some of the cost estimates. They'll obviously have some better numbers from their estimators on some of those electrical items. And then task 7 is development of what we talked about, that the second package that we'll bring to the board, that's the phase 1B, where they will develop then, based on all of the value engineering and constructability reviews, they will develop their guaranteed maximum price so that the board can make a decision on moving forward with the actual construction phase of the PR3 project. So here you can see the breakdown of the fees by task, with a total fee for the phase 1 package 1A services at $1,251,900. You'll also see that there is an owner's allowance in there for $150,000, just in case there's items that come up during this phase 1 services that we need them to do some additional investigations on. Taking a look at some of the funding opportunities that we've secured to date and see how they play in with the CMAR's activities. So along the top of this chart, you can see the funding opportunities that we've secured to date, the Resilient Florida program, the Swift Mud Cooperative funding, and also the state appropriations that we received in FY24, $10 million. The final design, I'm happy to say, 90% of that is covered through the Resilient Florida grant program. We received $7.5 million. We also have the cooperative funding agreement from the Water Management District that we will tap into for about $1 million to cover the final design phase at 100%. Again, no cost to the customers, going through preliminary and final design for the PR3 project. And the CMAR package, we estimated approximately $3 million for these phase 1 services. So we have $1.25 million that's earmarked for this kind of phase 1A, where we're doing most of the work. We anticipate phase 1B coming up to develop the guaranteed maximum price. So $3 million there, again, covered through the cooperative funding agreement with the Water Management District. So really looking at no cost to our customers, taking the PR3 project through final design all the way through these phase 1 services. So we'll get an opportunity when we have the contractors guaranteed maximum price then to move forward into that construction phase. Speaking of that, the construction phase, we still have about $71 million left over in grant funding to put towards the conveyance piping and pump stations portion, with an estimated cost of that at about $124 million. The customer share of that would be about 52.5. And then the actual reservoir construction, when we bid that out, we'll have about $50.7 million left in the cooperative funding agreement with the Water Management District. That will be put towards the reservoir. Estimated $216 million for that construction, leaves the customer share at about $165.3 million. So the bottom numbers there, out of the $351 million estimated for the PR3 project, 133.2 of that is through grants or cooperative funding, and the customer share is $217.8 million. So just wrapping up with a proposed delivery schedule. First is the CMAR schedule for these phase 1 services. Going through, obviously, project management extends the entire length. We've got about a 5 to 6 month schedule here. And the key milestones, really, in my opinion, is that task 4, where we're asking them to deliver those 3 cost estimates for all of those water supply projects. That we anticipate and hope to get at the beginning of March, which is a pretty quick turnaround. So that the board will have those numbers in front of them at the April board meeting, so you'll have a complete picture on the demands, the costs, and you can make that decision. We also have the development of the Phase 1B services. We'll have that delivered to us at the end of the Phase 1A package at the beginning of June. So then that $3 million that we have estimated, we'll know what the balance is left on that one. How does that fit into the overall surface water supply expansion project schedule? Right now you can see we are in the final design phase, just started that in October. That is the green crosshatched area there. That final design phase will go all the way to the beginning of 2025, January, when we will have 100% design plans to let for the reservoir construction. So we've got the construction management at-risk team, hoping to bring them on board with board's approval today for that early contractor involvement services, including updating those cost estimates. Want to bring the reservoir contractor on early 2025 so that we can begin filling the reservoir in the summer or the rainy season of 2027. That gives them about 2.5 years. That is a really, really tight schedule. So we're hoping to utilize maybe some of the collaboration with our CMAR to identify opportunities to accelerate that schedule if we can. And then we'll have the complete construction of the surface water supply expansion project, including the expansion of the water treatment facility, done by January of 2028, so that we can meet the customers' demands that they've given us and the dates to provide additional water to the region. So with that, that is the conclusion of the presentation. There are 2 motions for board consideration here. I'm not going to read the motions, but the first motion is for the agreement for the CMAR services, and the second motion is for that first Phase 1A package in the amount of $1,251,900.
Gentlemen, y'all have any questions? Ms. Holman?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. Regarding the timeline and the work that you just outlined needs to be done, what's the landscape for the actual earth-moving contractors who would actually bid and construct? I mean, what's going on in that world?
That's a really great question. I don't have the answer to that, but our CMAR team does. They know what the contractors currently are working on. There are several other reservoirs in the state that are under construction right now. We're hoping that the timing's great, that those projects are going to be winding down and we will have quite a few contractors available. We have had quite a lot of interest in the reservoir project, and right now we've had 4 solid teams approach us. So we feel pretty good about the timing, and the size of the project obviously gets a lot of eyes on it. So we're pretty optimistic.
I mean, that's good to hear. That it sounds like there's a competitive nature here in this project. I mean, I know a lot of us, our boards back home, have experienced some sticker shock
Yes.
and lack of participation from the private sector and getting on the bid list and actually providing bids. So I was just curious on this one, because I know you have a budget number here, and I'm wondering, where's that going to be when the bids come in? But
well, and that's, I think, one of the great benefits of having that CMAR, right? We've got a contractor looking at it, and they've got their ear to the market too. They're talking, and so they will have a better feel for schedule. Labor utilization is going to be the big for the reservoir. Really, is going to be the key driver there. Do they have the manpower, the resources for such a large project?
on the previous reservoir, is there no importing of fill required? It's usually just on-site fill is used, and they do the whole berm system?
Yes, so the previous reservoir, number 2, I was not with the authority when it was constructed, but my understanding is that all of the earthen work was taken from site, which is a huge cost
Yeah.
savings. We envision right now, obviously, a lot of the geotechnical work being done now is to verify the suitability of the soils on site and ensure that they've got the right consistency and mixtures there to build the reservoir. So
Yeah, I almost wonder when the engineering's done if there's any opportunity to export as an income stream potentially. Without the engineer out there,
Yeah.
I'm not an engineer.
yeah, we can ask, but we've got lots of plans for the property on the RV Griffin Reserve, and it'll be a discussion.
Yeah, I know some of those contractors, I think, claim any soils maybe that are in excess as part of their bid.
Yeah, I don't envision that on this contract.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner, I would just say, recall that the RV Griffin is owned by the Southwest Florida Water Management District, so we have to bring them into discussions before we can contemplate anything like selling off-site stores.
Don't forget, call me, cause I kinda want some royalties also too, baby. So we can go in the south. Okay, all right, any other questions or anything? Okay, we have a motion. The first motion is to approve the construction agreement between the authority and the construction management at risk CMARC for the Peace River Regional Reservoir Number 3, PR3, pumping and conveyance facilities, and authorize executive director to make non-monetary edits to the agreement.
So moved.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried 4-1, or excuse me, 4-0. Okay. Our second motion, we have a motion, to approve the Phase 1 pre-construction services package 1A, services in the amount of $1,251,900 with Arthur Western Contractors LLC to provide pre-construction services for the Peace River Regional Reservoir Number 3, PR3, pumping and conveyance facilities project.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Teseo. There we go. That's what they call you Teos. Teseo.
Got it.
Second by Commissioner Brown. Any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous today because it's my first time on the board. I have two of my colleagues here from Charlotte County. I have Commissioner PRMRWSA and Commissioner Doherty. Also have the county attorney, Jeanette Knowlton, here. So if I slip up today, I think they're going to boot me out and put somebody in.
You'll be all right. You'll be all right. I've started both of them and they're not perfect either. All right. So let me get back before I get my big shell too far down the mountain. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried 4-0. All right, Ms. Terry, I believe you're up again, agenda item 3.
Thank you. For the record, Terry Wolf with Authority staff. Regular item 3, the agreement between FDEP and Authority for Dam Safety Review by Independent Consultant is an action item, and there will be a motion presented at the end of the discussion for board approval. This is going to be a really quick item. The agenda here is we're just going to cover quickly the purpose of the agreement with FDEP and the Water Management District, cover Black & Veatch's consultants' scope and fee, and just review their proposed schedule. So the purpose of the agreement between the authority and FDEP, the environmental resources permit for the PR3 project requires consideration not only the environmental but also the safety regulations associated with the construction and operation of a high hazard dam. That would be reservoir number 3. The environmental components of the permit application review are being conducted by the Southwest Florida Water Management District. However, the district and the DEP have entered into a coordination agreement for the dam safety review portion of the ERP application. Now, because Reservoir 3 is a highly engineered dam, FDEP requires special expertise to help review the design aspects and the construction documents. To this extent, DEP has requested that the authority provide and pay for the services of a qualified and independent professional engineering consultant to review those dam safety requirements as part of their regulatory review of the PR3 project. Having said that, Black & Veatch Consultants completed the third-party review of the design consultants' 30% design documents for the Water Management District. They are familiar with the PR3 documents, and the authority does have a continuing engineering services agreement with Black & Veatch. So we have asked Black & Veatch to provide a scope and fee for the regulatory review assistance with DEP. The scope of services is pretty narrow, as you can imagine, and generally will be driven by the regulatory requirements requested of the DEP to satisfy their review, approval, and any conditions that need to be contained in that environmental resources permit. The tasks include project management, which run the length of the project, the reservoir design, technical reviews, and any regulatory coordination meetings or discussions. You can see there the fee, which is on a time and materials basis, is $56,492. The schedule for these services, got a pretty short burn here, about 3 months, 90 days. We're looking to have the consultant work with FDEP as the Water Management District is reviewing the environmental components. They will be reviewing the dam safety components and requirements, collaborating through DEP and the Water Management District to have their comments included in the district's documents within that 90-day time frame. With that, we have 2 motions for board consideration. The first motion is the agreement between DEP and the authority to retain the consultant and provide those services. And the second motion is basically to issue that first work order to Black and Beach for $56,492 on a time and materials basis so that they can complete those reviews and coordination with DEP.
Okay. Gentlemen, you have any questions for Ms. Hope? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, in regards to this consultant, will he be working with our engineer that's actually designing?
If they have
reservoir
questions,
so they can kind of preempt any issues? Because it sounds like they're, after the fact, going to consult on the design with FDP.
so Black and Beach is a third-party consultant to our design consultant. Our design consultant is HDR Engineering, but they worked together through the third-party review already. Those 30% design documents, the Water Management District had Black and Beach already look at those as part of the requirements for our cooperative funding agreement. So Black and Beach seemed to be the appropriate firm to move forward with additional reviews because, number one, no learning curve, right? They're already familiar with the documents. So they will be basically DEP's regulatory expert in reviewing the design drawings. So we're hoping a lot of that information or collaboration that they need to do, will be a smooth transition because they're already familiar with it. They've already had a lot of those discussions. It's just looking at it from the regulatory approver's perspective and any questions they might have.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that if we're procuring the consultant for FDEP, that he's very familiar with our design going in, so he's consulting accordingly. So there's no issues. So I just want to make sure that, if there is coordination required, he has to look at our plans, it's included in the scope of work. In terms of, as we design, wouldn't it make sense to have a consultant like this commenting on with the engineer?
They will work with the engineer.
It's all included in this scope?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, coordination meetings, not only from the district and understanding what their comments are, but also asking those questions and ensuring that those recommendations or conditions that they have are included in the DEP's documents. So they will be conversing with our engineer, our design engineer, on any questions they might have. We're hoping it's limited though, because they've kind of seen it already.
Yeah. The way I read it, I didn't see that. I saw this as more of we're procuring the consultant for FDEP because they don't have that type of professional staff.
Exactly. Yeah, you are right.
We're procuring independent reviewer for them, so they wanted an independent professional engineer to review. And what better than the one that the Water Management District had already hired to do an independent review for the cooperative funding.
There's just a lot of moving parts here. I'm trying to get my arms around it.
Understand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none, we have a motion to approve the agreement between the Florida Department of Environmental Protection and the Authority for Dam Safety Review by an independent consultant and authorized executive director. Approve the minus, how do you say that?
De minimis.
De minimis. Yeah, changes if required by FDEP.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all approved, Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 4-0. Okay, our second motion we have is to approve and hire Black and Beach under the continuing engineering services contract to conduct this work and authorize executive director to execute work order number 1 with Black and Beach to provide design review for the Peace River Reservoir number 3 project on behalf of the FDEP in the amount not to exceed $56,492.
So moved.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Okay. Alright, brings us to agenda item number 4, Mr. Gill.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Jim Guidier, Director of Water Resources and Planning. Speaking of the PR3 project, we're going to continue some discussions about the PR3 project here. We're going to be focusing predominantly on the wetland impact and mitigation related elements of the PRP application and the project itself. And we also want to begin to introduce to the board some concepts related to the future of the R.V. Griffin property. Mitigation is often a large scale opportunity, but it also takes up a lot of land. So we want to kind of talk to you about that as part of this overall discussion. Some quick background. Terry already touched on this, so I'll do this quickly, but HDR was approved to proceed with the project in February of 2022, and they have completed all those aspects of the preliminary design and permitting, and as Terry mentioned, by September 15th, they had submitted the ERP applications, and I'll put an S on that because actually they did 3 applications. 2 of those were submitted in advance of the construction application that was submitted on September 15th. The first 2 were more wetland and mitigation related type considerations. Those often take a lot of time to work through in the permitting process, so we wanted to kind of jumpstart the process for those 2. So what were the first 2 applications? First one was to establish what we call a formal JD or jurisdictional line for the wetlands. Essentially what we tried to do is identify what our wetland scientists believe to be the wetlands and the extent of them on site. The second permit application was a conceptual application to try and establish what the agencies believe to be the functional value of those wetlands. And then lastly, the construction application, that's the big one. That's got all the issues that Terry was just talking about, with everything from dam safety issues to stormwater management and other things like that. So we are ongoing with that, and as Terry mentioned, SwiftMud is taking the lead on the more classic ERP application elements, stormwater management, wetland impacts and mitigation, and then DEP will be undertaking the dam safety elements of that review. So what's an environmental resource permit? Just to touch on that very quickly. There are typically 3 issues that you're dealing with there when you don't have a large-scale reservoir like we do, and those are typically going to be your flood protection, your water quality protection, and then also wetland impacts and mitigation. In this particular case, given the scale of the reservoir and the dam safety issues, we also have dam safety as a part of that. So today, though, we're going to be focusing mostly on wetland impacts and even more importantly on the mitigation-related considerations the board's going to be presented coming into next year. We'll be having quite a bit more dialogue about what the mitigation plan might be, what might be the optimal way to proceed. So we want to kind of start with some high-level conceptual discussions at this point, so it'll be easier once we get there. Okay, to try and orient you to where we are on the property, if you take a look at the graphic to the right, the red triangle is outlining the R.V. Griffin Reserve, and the areas in green to the northeastern sides there are existing 2 reservoirs, and then the outline in the light blue with the green shapes within it is where PR3, the 3rd reservoir, will be located, and within that, the orange shapes are the existing wetlands that are in that area. So as you can see, there's an unavoidable impact of about 274 acres of wetland on the property. They are in 2 different basins, the Myakka Basin and the Peace River Basin. And then we have both herbaceous and forested impacts in that area. And our consultant HDR has completed all those delineations. We've obviously also met with SwiftMud in the field on some intensive review of those lines, and I'll talk to you more about that in a moment. And then this idea of functional loss, just to give you an idea what that is. Essentially, not all wetlands are created equal. The state of Florida went ahead and adopted the Unified Mitigation Assessment methodology to try and make it easier to distinguish between wetlands that have less value versus those that have more value for fish and wildlife. And so this methodology is applied to ultimately come up with what's considered a functional unit for a wetland, so that they can then not only evaluate what kind of impact you have, but also what kind of mitigation that you're going to have to put together to offset any impacts that you're proposing. Okay, so the status of where we're at, as I mentioned, we have 2 applications that we submitted in advance that were more focused on just the wetland-related aspects of them. Both of those are ongoing. They're proceeding pretty well. We've actually had, as I mentioned, Swiftmud's been in the field. They've walked all of our wetland lines. We were in very close agreements. There's always typically some differences of opinion on the extent of the line, but actually most of them were very, very close. We are now surveying those wetland lines in, and once those are completed, we'll be submitting them back to Swiftmud. And we are also comparing notes on what we believe those UMAM scores, the functional values, are for the wetlands with Swiftmud. Again, we're very close. There's one particular area we're going to have more discussion about in a meeting next week, but that's moving along pretty well. In fact, we appreciate all Swiftmud's help on that. And then lastly, the construction application, which again, this is the big one. This is going to be looking at flood protection issues, floodplain, stormwater management, also looking at water quality protection out there. And ultimately, this is where the mitigation plan will be worked out with the agency. And ultimately, we will be making decisions, well, the board will be making decisions in the coming months as to what the mitigation ought to be. And so that's ultimately going to be whatever the board decides will be rolled into this permit as a requirement for mitigation of the impacts that we're proposing. So there's really 2 primary ways to go about doing mitigation. One of them is to do it yourself, and we call that on-site permitting responsible mitigation that we would do on the RV Griffin. And the other is to go to a mitigation bank and buy mitigation bank credits from them to use their credits to offset the impacts. And you can also do a combination of the 2. But on the on-site, in that particular case, you're required to do all the construction, making sure that the mitigation achieves success, doing all the long-term monitoring and maintenance on all of those, and in perpetuity maintaining those wetlands in a successful condition. Typically, it's a less upfront cost for capital expenditure, but you also have perpetual monitoring and maintenance costs, and you also have the risk potentially that your mitigation may not be as successful as you anticipated it would be. So that's always, with any mitigation, you face that as a possibility. Another thing is you will encumber your own lands to undertake that type of mitigation on your property. With the mitigation bank credit, the bankers actually pursue and receive their own permits. They then create the mitigation, they achieve success, and then when they do that, they're able to release credits. So we went out and we asked for statements of qualifications or information from the bankers in the area. There were several of them. We asked them to give us an idea of how many credits are actually available right now, how many they might anticipate being released and available through next year when we're trying to actually get the permit issued, and get further insight on costs. But typically, your cost is going to be higher for a mitigation bank up front, the upfront capital costs. But again, they take on, as opposed to ourselves, they take on the mitigation risk. Once we buy those credits, any failure is going to be on the mitigation banker to correct. So there are benefits certainly there. And then the other thing, of course, is that they're using their lands for this, which leaves our lands to be used for other activities that the board may want to use for future water supply related considerations. So to talk about the on-site option, really to look at it, we looked at the entire property, and we have more than enough property to offset 100% of our proposed impacts on the property. So that's good news. And so besides the typical lower upfront costs, there's some of the benefits of the on-site is we could, even if we wanted to, do excess mitigation, more mitigation than necessary to offset the impacts for the PR3 project. Perhaps there are other projects that we might choose to do. But so that's one thought, if we should choose to want to do that. One of the drawbacks with that, though, is trying to negotiate excess mitigation, particularly under the timeframes when we're trying to get a permit. We'd like to have a permit in our hands before the end of next year. That could be a bit of a challenge. In addition to that, again, the reduced land availability on the RV Griffin is something that we think the board will want to consider. There are a number of other things we've talked with the board about. I'll be shortly talking to you about our brackish groundwater effort that we're making. So we're looking at that, potentially expanding that at some point in the future. The board's been very interested in alternative energy, solar fields, things like that on the property. And who knows what else we might want to choose to do for water supply related infrastructure. And decades from now, we don't necessarily know right now, but those are the kind of things we'll be wanting to talk about in the coming months. Now with mitigation bank credits, to give you an idea of what's available out there, there are more than enough credits in the Peace River Basin to 100% offset our impacts in the Peace River Basin. We can offset also 100% of our forested impacts in the Myakka, but not all of the herbaceous. So no matter which way we go, even if we choose to do 100% mitigation bank, there's still going to be some additional mitigation needs to be done. And that would one of those options would be obviously to do it on our own property, whatever amount would be left there. To talk about the benefits, again, besides the reduced risk on us, again, the permitting is relatively straightforward with a mitigation bank. You don't have to go through negotiating whether the mitigation plan works, technically, scientifically, and whether or not regulatorily you're offsetting everything that you need to. You can go to the bank to be able to do that. And obviously the decreased encumbrance on our own lands is an important consideration for us, because the more we take up now, the sooner eventually we may need more property, which could include more land purchases off-site for other things in the future. It may be decades in the future, but nonetheless, it's a consideration we should think about in advance. And really the main drawback there is the upfront capital cost is anticipated to most likely be higher. I'm going to try and give you a visual illustration with 3 slides to give you an idea where the land encumbrances and wetlands are on the property right now versus where we'll be when we put PR3 in, and then ultimately what happens if we do mitigation on site versus not doing mitigation on site. So this is the current situation on the property. As you can see again, the triangle is the R.B. Griffin property there. The area shown in green are wetlands. You can see our 2 reservoirs, 1 and 2. To the northwest of Reservoir 2, you see the reddish crosshatched area and also kind of an orange crosshatched area. That area is all associated with the mitigation that was required for Reservoir number 2. It's well over 1,000 acres of land that's dedicated perpetually to mitigation. There's a little bit more there to the northeast of Reservoir 2. It's a little harder to see, but there is a Gulf of Tortoise conservation easement area there. And so you can get an idea that we've already got quite a bit of the land is already either in wetlands or in dedicated lands, encumbered lands. So the next graphics is give you an idea. Once we just place the reservoir itself on the property, again, this is again more than 1,000 acres of land again that will go just to the reservoir itself. So we're taking up quite a bit of land with the reservoir. This is what remains. Now I mentioned that we had looked at we could have lots of excess mitigation. We pared that back, but the initial stab that our consultants have taken is to give us a bit of excess mitigation for Reservoir 3 above the ground what we needed. Upon further discussion, we asked them to go back and look at refining that and bring it closer to a 1-to-1 type of evaluation. Now this first graphic I'm showing you, because they're still working on getting the refined one, is what would be taken up by the first shot that they took at mitigation, which does indeed have some excess mitigation, but you can see these areas that are kind of tan in the southernmost areas, and then again just north of mitigation areas A and B, the areas in red. You can see that if we were to choose to do this, this is going to be a lot of land taken up. Again, that area is again well over 1,000 acres itself, and I believe that while we can pare this back, there will still be substantial areas, even in the pared back version that we anticipate receiving probably in January. So just as trying to give you an idea that as one of the considerations for this is for the board ultimately is what do we want to do with these lands? Do we want to encumber these lands for perpetual mitigation on the property, or do we want to hold some of it back for other types of plans that we may have on the site? So I hope the visual illustration hopefully helps with that.
Got a question?
Yeah, so in my one-on-one with Mr. Coates, I talked about putting together a schedule of the land, and you talk about all those different uses. It's really hard to make a decision without understanding the impact of what all those uses. I heard solar field, I heard some other things. You also talked about excess mitigation. Would we qualify to sell credits at some point? Is that an income stream? What is the cost of those credits? If we put out quality functional wetland, and if there's additional property available, I don't know what the future uses are. After Reservoir 3, is there anything of substance? I think we're tapped out on reservoirs on this property, is that correct?
I think on reservoirs we are, yes. I could show you a graphic that shows you where the brackish groundwater well field is conceptually going to be, et cetera. As far as the mitigation itself, when we were talking about excess mitigation, we were thinking about that only for authority-based projects. Eventually, we were going to have other pipelines and things like that where we could do it in advance. We're not talking about trying to do a mitigation bank of our own. That is a very involved process, and in fact, there are certain prohibitions on what public entities can do on their property. You can't really compete with the private sector mitigation.
To me, it's the same thing. If we're gonna use it for ourselves, we're banking for ourselves.
For ourselves,
So
correct.
we don't have to go out and pay. So either way, it's the same money, right?
Yeah, you're just not selling them to somebody else.
That's what I'm saying, if we have a schedule of things like future projects, the solar field, we can start plugging in monetarily what that means to the authority and make, decisions based on that criteria as well. But we would need a schedule of all those uses and maybe like a workshop, if you guys do a workshop, is something that we can start putting all these uses into that schedule and figure things out.
No, that all makes sense, and I think that needs to be part of our discussion with you in the coming months.
Thanks, Jay.
Okay, so just trying to wrap this up. Again, I think it's premature for us to make a recommendation right now. There are still things we're trying to figure out. We are working through SwiftMud's position on the regulatory issues, making good progress on that. We do want to find out what the cost will be on this updated version of the mitigation. So that's underway right now. We're looking at that mitigation bank credit option. We want to get that as fair an evaluation as possible. And ultimately try to get an idea of the pluses and minuses of both options. Is it best to go with one versus the other? Is it best to do a combination of them? Schedule is a great part of that that we can certainly talk to you about. But ultimately we're looking for kind of an optimal balance of those considerations before we decide. And it's not just simply an upfront capital cost question, because there's a lot of other cost related things that are kind of hidden behind the scenes that we'll further talk about. So we'll have recommendations for you coming in the earlier parts of 2024. Again, we want to try and have the permit by the end of the year, so we will need to be doing that. Some of the things that I know that the board will want to be thinking about is looking at certainly the cost comparisons and including a potential down payment. If we do mitigation bank credits, before we can get a permit considered complete for issuance, we're going to have to put a down payment down for the mitigation bank credits that we're going to purchase. I'll talk about that in a second. We can talk further about risks associated with doing mitigation all yourself, what the operation and maintenance costs would be, the perpetual, maintenance of the property, and just again the considerations of, all right, when might we need to go purchase additional lands in the future? We're lucky enough right now to be on properties that SwiftMud purchased to help build this authority, so it's very different when we're going out and possibly buying them, those properties ourselves. And then if ultimately we desire to do mitigation banks, again, we'll have the negotiations with the banker. We have a 15% deposit you typically have to put down in order to get a reservation letter from the banker sent to the Water Management District confirming that we are able to do that. That could end up being a couple $1 million just to do that. And so ultimately we'll be looking to try and get that information and bring it back before you. But that is essentially what we wanted to talk with you about now, so it's not such a surprise later on. There's a lot of moving parts, as you said, Mr. Ciceo, and I think from that standpoint, that's really why we wanted to begin the discussion now. Again, just the information, no action required, but if anyone has any further questions.
Board members, any questions? Okay. Here none, moving on to agenda item number 5, Jim, you're up again.
Yes, sir. Okay, I'd just like to give you an update. It's been mentioned that we have a brackish groundwater project underway. I wanted to give you an update on where we are on that. Again, information item, no action required from the board on this. This time last year, I think standing at the same location, we had a discussion about we had actually added to our water supply portfolio brackish groundwater for the first time. Up until that point, we've been 100% surface water. So we actually received a permit from SwiftMud to add brackish groundwater to the permit. And we were able to do that in a partnership with Sarasota County. When Sarasota County relocated its University Parkway wellfield, it ended up having great benefits for what SwiftMud calls the most impacted area of their southern Wisconsin area. The county was able to move their quantities because it was actually a very beneficial thing for that area. And there was still a lot of recovery, so we took a look on our side to say, well, we're even farther away from that MIA. Could we get additional quantities? We did all the groundwater flow modeling and evaluation of that and came to agreement with SwiftMud that indeed we could actually get quantities issued to us for brackish groundwater that heretofore we never could have done had the county not done that. So that partnership was critical. So at that time, we actually obtained a permit And the maximum daily quantity we would actually get in finished water from that after about 20% estimate for efficiency and water treatment was 7.2 million gallons a day. From an allocation standpoint of finished supply, that would be about 5 million gallons a day on an annual average basis. So we were able to secure about a reliable 5 MGD of supply, assuming we go ahead and build the facility. So the board was very interested in that, and given some concerns about the costs and things that may be associated with the PR3 project, and just because it's good practice to have kind of more projects on the shelf if you need them, asked us to go ahead and move forward with actually 30% design or preliminary design of the brackish groundwater facility. And we're doing that on a parallel path with the surface water expansion project, and hoping to be back in front of you come next April board to talk about what the 30% design is, the estimated cost for the project. So Corolla was selected by the board in April of this year, and they were put under contract with their scope come June. And we've asked them within 9 months, under a very aggressive schedule, to do a drilling and testing program, work with us on permitting, and also do their engineering design. So there's a lot going on in a very short period of time. The drilling and testing program is critical for any time you try to develop a brackish groundwater well field. You need to do it intelligently, and you need to go out and drill, pump the wells, get an idea what the groundwater quality is, get an idea what the aquifer systems, and perhaps most importantly, what the confinement units between those aquifers are capable of doing. So that's being evaluated now. We certainly need to know what the groundwater quality is going to be so the design engineer can actually decide on what we should be doing on what treatment. We also need to be looking at deep injection well disposal opportunities, because you will have a concentrate as a result of the treatment process, and that has to be disposed of. So the permitting side, also we were asked to seek an increase in those water use permit withdrawals. Because the permit that we actually got reallocated authorized impacts the county already had, Sarasota County already has, we were able to leverage that without asking for new quantities. And new quantities is the big ticket item in the Southern Water Use Caution Area, that you have to show you will not cause a new impact to that MIA. So we thought there was some more water we could go and pursue for that, and so we included that as part of the project, and see if we can increase how much allocable finished supply we would have. And obviously the engineering design is critical to the entire process. What treatment should we use? Where are the wells going to be? What's the quality of the raw water? All of that plays into the process. The pipelines for delivery from the wells all the way to the plant, and the remaining issues associated with engineering design. So where are we at now? Well, we have identified 15 well locations, up to 15 wells. We may not need 15 wells ultimately, but we did ask for flexibility out of the Water Management District to make in-field geologic calls as to how deep we want these wells to be. The deeper you go, the more mineralized the water is, but the deepest zones actually are very, very productive. So you could get a possibility of less wells, but you could get a much more mineralized water at depth. So we asked them for the flexibility to make a case-by-case evaluation, and perhaps drill the well shallower. They may only get, say, perhaps maybe 1 million gallons a day versus several million gallons a day, but the quality is anticipated to be better. So there's a balancing act that we want to look at there. We have also decided maximum daily treatment capability of 15 MGD is what we're shooting for. That is estimated to generate about 12 million gallons a day on a maximum daily basis of finished supply. We are looking at the layout of the water treatment plant and everything that goes along with that. The electrical considerations that were also mentioned by Terry. Looking at how would we go about blending finished water with raw water, or are there ways to do that for greater efficiencies and cost savings? And ultimately we're looking at a conceptual layout for the deep injection wells and getting together a permit application for an underground injection control or deep injection well permit with the DEP. So on the project status for well construction and testing, we have 3 testing wells that are part of this project. One is in the superficial aquifer, which is the shallowest. The next deepest is the intermediate aquifer system. Those wells are completed. We are in the process of completing the upper Florida aquifer well, which will be the production well. We're down about 500 feet or so right now. That is going to be a very intensive and very data collection oriented effort there to really refine what the groundwater quality is and what the geology is out there. So that's a critical part of what we're doing there. Pleased to tell the board that we did actually submit for an application for a water use permit and got one from the Southwest Florida Water Management District within about a 3-month period, which is pretty unprecedented. The consultant did a great job on it. SWIPMA was very, very helpful in the process. So as a result of that, we did get an increase in our authorized withdrawals. And it ends up taking us from about a 5 MGD of allocable annual average supply to about 7.5 milligrams a day. That's an initial estimate, 7.5. So that gives us more supply that we could tap versus what we had when we were having this discussion last year. So that was certainly good news. Well construction and testing, we're looking to complete all that testing in the coming months, probably with hope to have everything done in the January to early February timeframe. And ultimately, we will come out with a decision as to what we think the best, at least for this particular well, what the best well specifications would be. What's the casing depth? What's the total depth? What aquifer are we actually going to be tapping, or what units of the Florida aquifer are we actually going to be tapping? So we'll complete that well. We'll have a technical report. That information is being fed into the engineering design process as well. We have quite a bit of data out on the site on the Swanee because we have the Swanee limestone, that's the unit that our aquifer storage and recovery wells are in. We don't have as much on the deeper wells. So that information is being fed into the engineering design and will be part of the overall plan that we get and the 30% design plan that we get come next April. So we will give the board an update in February, and then by the April board, you will have a 30% design package and an engineer's cost opinion at that time as to what we think the project will cost. Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, on the modifications of the water use permit, maybe I missed it in the presentation, I didn't see it here. What's the expiration of that? How long does it go out?
We have a 50-year water use permit, so there's
So it
about
goes
46 years left on it.
Okay, so the modification will run.
It does not change the expiration date, that's correct. So we have plenty of time to decide when we actually want to use it.
Yeah, because I wanted to make sure the modification ran with
It does.
water use permit. So, making this investment in 5 or 10 years, we have to go back and ask for more.
Correct.
I don't even want to go in that direction. So,
Yeah, and I think that's the issue on water use permits in general. There's been kind of over the last 20 years an outcry from the regulated public about I'm going to spend a lot of money on a project and you're only giving me 6-year
right.
permits,
That
10-year
was my
permits.
concern. Yeah, I didn't see that in here, so I wasn't sure how long it went. Because I thought the brackish water may have been, that modification may have been treated differently than the existing agreement, but you're saying it's not.
It did not change the expiration date at all. It just added another source to the portfolios.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jim.
Mr. Chairman, if you'd indulge me, and Mike, if it's okay, I'd like to, as part of the UIC application process that Jim was talking about, there's a certification of financial responsibility for local governments. And under this specific statute, and special independent districts such as the authority are considered local governments. So the idea is that as part of that permit app, you have to just have copies. You have to certify that you, meaning the authority, is willing to abandon and plug any of these injection wells in the future. So that's another one we need. So this is the form, and I know I'm walking it off, and I want to be able to get the application in before your February meeting. So I wanted to see if I could put up a motion to approve the certification of financial responsibility for local government. This is saying that, and of course, if we ever built these, we would not abandon them, because as long as we're using the system, we will be using these wells. So that the cost estimate is $864,000 if we built them all and then abandoned them. So I wanted to go ahead and get this approved so that we could put it in the application that we have coming up. So I just need a motion to approve the signature of the certification of financial responsibility for local government.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought items that we make a motion on have to be posted publicly on the agenda. Can we do a walk-on like this without having it properly noticed?
We can do a walk-on. It's properly noticed that this item was before us in the agenda. This isn't a budget issue. It doesn't change anything in the budget. It's just it's a form that goes into the permit application. So that's the reason why I was putting it on. One of us potentially would have signed it, but when I saw it was for $864,000, I said I want to bring this to the board to get approval on it. There's no expenditure here. It's just a matter of saying that you're certifying, in your application that you'll plug and abandon these wells if we ever build them and if we ever shut the system down. So that's what I wanted to bring up on.
So is this time sensitive then for this meeting?
It is to some extent. From the standpoint is we get a completed application and we need this form to fill it out. But if the board's will is not to do this and push this off until the February board meeting, we'll submit the application without it, we'll do a request for additional information, we'll slow down the processing some, but we could wait till February if we had to.
Well, I mean, you're,
Is that correct?
That's correct.
I mean, you're the legal counsel. I just want to make sure, you know, that we're properly noticing all the documents that we're actually making motions and taking action on. Because, you know, this is an actionable item
Yes.
to add it. So you're advising that it's okay to do
Otherwise,
this.
it's okay because there is no change in budget, and it's nothing that was going to occur basically as an expense for the authority by virtue of this. And you'd be back to also to approve the construction of the project and have to take another vote. All this is part of the permit application.
Is it going to cost us any additional, you know, actual money by delaying this and bringing it back?
It could just slow the approval, which might cost us like one more request for individually for response, but it's, you know, might relatively minor expense, quite frankly.
Thank you.
It's pleasure of the board. Secretary Quayle, someone stole it.
Excuse me? Oh, someone stole it.
No, your microphone. You don't have a mic.
Do you need a
Oh, your mic.
asking for your mic?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the chairman executing the certificate of financial responsibility.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Motion by Commissioner Cruz, second by Commissioner Durant. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 4-0. That's why you ain't been saying nothing today, Mr. Cruz. You didn't have a microphone.
We're sharing.
You're here.
I think I'm not going to have a microphone at the next meeting.
We'll let you slide me if you do.
So if there's no further questions, I'll,
Any more any questions? Okay.
thank you.
Hearing none, agenda item number 6, this will be action item, and it's presented by Mike Noel.
Good morning, members of the board, Mike Knowles, authority staff. Welcome to our newest member from Charlotte County. I'll be going over regular agenda item number 6. This is the Regional Integrated Loop Phase 2B Interconnect Project. It's the interlocal agreement and amendment presentation. There'll be 2 motions, as mentioned, as part of this presentation. The first would be to consider a revised interlocal agreement to fully fund the Phase 2B project, and also an amendment to the Progressive Design Build with Woodruff & Sons to take it through final design and construction. I'll be going over the project background, talk about some agency coordination on this pipeline project and some benefits to the project that have been received through that coordination, then review the revised interlocal agreement, and then discuss the guaranteed maximum price from Woodruff & Sons. So the Regional Integrated Loop Phase 2B Interconnect, or Phase 2B pipeline, is 13 miles of 42-inch diameter pipe providing 7 interconnects for Charlotte County system. Estimated to start construction January of 2024. The pipeline starts out near Cirrus Road Interconnect near Phase 2A and progresses west on Hillsborough Boulevard, approximately 7 miles. Anticipated to be under construction from January of 2024 through April of 2025. Then after crossing US 41, the pipeline then is along Chancellor Boulevard for another 3 to 4 miles. And that would be under construction from April of 25 through November of 25. Then the pipeline route turns south, parallel to Campbell Street before crossing Mayaca River and terminating at Charlotte County's Gulf Cove Booster Station. That's about a 2-mile stretch, estimated to be under construction from October of 25 through March of 26. Got some major milestones for this project that have been in front of the board. April of last year, the board approved the original interlocal agreement and the preferred pipeline route. And then October of last year, the board approved the first contract for Phase 1 services covering 60% design and development of the GMP with the Woodruff & Sons design build team. And then April of this year, the board approved the early procurement package of up to $20 million for this project. To date, about $11.5 million has been spent on owner direct purchase, realizing about the 7% tax savings on that, so almost $100,000 in savings. So some of the coordination on this project, you go 13 miles through any city or county. Imagine you've got to coordinate with a lot of different utilities, agencies, departments, and this project has been no different. One of the biggest benefits to this project has been the coordination with SwiftMud, Southwest Florida Water Management District, and Sarasota County, right where we cross the Mayaca River. We're proposing a horizontal directional drill, and both those entities own property on both sides of the river that we've been pursuing easements with and have had positive meetings with them. The benefits of this project, the SwiftMud property, if that permit or that easement goes through, allows us to be out of Campbell Street. So that's about a mile of road. We don't have to kind of slow down installation. We don't have to restore that road. So that's a cost savings to us if we can be in district property. It also reduces our need for easements on private parcels, both north and south of the river. Then with Sarasota County, the Mayaca Island Point Preserve, we've had positive meetings to open cut through some of that park up to within about 800 feet of the water's edge to start our drill. That again reduces our need for private parcels easements, but it also reduces our drill by about 1,000 feet. And the cost per linear foot for a drill is about 4 times that as an open cut. So right away, that's a cost savings to the project. But also that mile marker helped us change pipe material. At a mile drill, we were looking at steel pipe. Now that we're about 4,200 feet of the drill, we've got a more cost-effective pipe material available with HDPE. So altogether, just those two coordination for easements saved the project about $8 million. So another item that, or another coordination that's been taking place with Charlotte County Utility Department, Bruce Bullard has been very involved in this project, looking at a capital improvement that the county was planning down Hillsborough Boulevard. It's actually a small diameter water main parallel to our 42-inch pipe. It's been in the county's CIP, and working with the county's utility department identified that this would be a cost savings to the county's project. So the benefit is the small diameter pipe could go within the same trench impact as the 42-inch. The cost savings would come from only mobilizing one contractor. If our progressive design build team were to install this, it would also only be one dewatering setup and only one restoration of the roads, the asphalt, the sod. On top of that, it would only be one disruption to the public down Hillsborough Boulevard to have the same contractor do both pipes instead of having the 42-inch come in and then a year or two later have another contractor come and tear up your mailbox. So getting to the interlocal agreement, with the original interlocal agreement, we start off with a budget about $74.4 million. With our design builder on board in October, by November, we received our first rough order of magnitude. The project actually came in about $96 million, so significantly over what our budget was. Working with the contractor, Charlotte County Utilities, we identified several areas where we could cut costs, look at installation methods, and that first impact of price reduction going from November to March really saw a price drop, about $6 million off the cost of the project. However, since March, we've been nickeling and diming it down, but we're not getting as much as a price drop, I guess, as we had that initial blush of value engineering. So where the project's at right now, we're at $88.195 million. That is the total project cost to date. And there's 2 revisions to the interlocal agreement we're asking the board to consider. They're both 2 exhibits. So Exhibit 3, it would raise the cap for the Charlotte County contribution. The original contribution was $37.5 million, and now to cover the total cost of the project, that cap would be at $50.945 million. The other revision to the interlocal agreement would be to add the parallel water main to the contract through a new Exhibit 4 that covers the scope of work. The Charlotte County Engineering Department is actually designing that in-house, and the budget for that is about $5 million. Half of that is contingency for that parallel water main project, and that would be paid for separately than the Phase 2B pipe. So if approved today, the interlocal agreement would go in front of the Charlotte County Board on December 12th. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the interlocal agreement revisions before we go to the motion.
Board members, you have any questions? Hearing none. Recommend action for number A for agenda item number 6 is a motion to approve the revised interlocal agreement for regional integrated loop system Phase 2B interconnect between the Peace River Manasota Regional Water Supply Authority and Charlotte County, and authorize the executive director to approve de minimis changes if needed.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Okay, motion B, board authorization for the executive director and general counsel to finalize and execute a contract amendment with Woodruff and Sons Incorporated to complete design and construction of the regional integrated loop phase 2B pipeline project for a guaranteed maximum price not to exceed $70,688,982.87. Notice to proceed will not be issued until Charlotte County approves the revised interlocal agreement to fully fund the project.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, have a motion to second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, we're gonna have an interesting discussion at our board meeting.
Yep. Yeah, you might want to pack a lunch for that one.
Take it.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to second for, motion B. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 4-0. Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Manson, general counsel report.
I believe that you handled the issue I was going to do on the general counsel report, so I just want to say the Knowles were robbed and Merry Christmas.
Executive director report, Mr. Coates.
Just a couple of quick items, Mr. Chair. As you heard earlier, Terry was talking about the demand projections and the needs in 2028 we have coming up. That's a little bit, it's about 2 years earlier than we projected in our 2020 master plan. But fortunately, the board decisions in the past, knowing that it takes 7 to 10 years to put a new water supply online, and it put us in an excellent position to meet those needs by 2028. In order to have that supply capacity online and available in 2028, we will need to financially commit and move on the next supply project in 2024. So we will need decisions in 2024 on that. To support that, we would like to have a board workshop in February. And we would discuss customer needs, how much water, when it's needed, review the supply project costs and yields. There's going to be a required change in the master water supply contract to accommodate all of this. We need to talk about the decision milestones that are going to bring this all together. So our intent would be to come away from that workshop in February with the information we need to support a board decision in April on the project that moves forward for our next regional water supply. Identify the level of participation for the customers and agree on an amendment to the master water supply contract that's needed to move ahead. We've got a lot of information to cover and important decisions to make in 2024 on how our region's water supplies are going to be met in the next 20 years. So we got a lot of work to do in the next 4 or 5 months. Just wanted to give a preview of coming attractions, all of that. The next item quickly is Swiftmud water shortage order. So at their November 14th board meeting, Swiftmud issued a water shortage order for their 16-county area. They cited low rainfall, water on the river flows, lake levels. Mr. Anderson talked about this earlier in the meeting. The order requires the Tampa Bay area to go from 2 days a week watering outdoor water to 1 day water restrictions. For our 4-county area, there's no immediate impact. We stay at 2 days a week schedule, except Sarasota County actually has a local ordinance requiring 1 day a week. The South Florida Water Management District, just to the south of us, issued a water shortage order last month as well for Lee and Collier counties. So while we're still able to pull some water off the river, river flows are declining, and if these conditions persist, we do expect that in the next month or two, SWIP month will include our region in the water shortage where we're required to go to 1 day a week. We're good on storage right now. We're in good shape, but we may have to go to 1 day a week water in the next couple of months. Just a preview of coming interventions. That's it.
Is the workshop you talked about, is that what we got here for February 7th, or is that just our regular meeting February 7th?
That will be at our regular meeting.
Okay, and where are you talking about doing the workshop?
At the end of the meeting.
Okay, so February 7th, we'll knock it all out. Have a meeting and then go directly into the workshop, right? And you're feeding all those, right?
We will do that.
We got everything we got. Any board members have any questions? Okay. Board member comments, Commissioner Cruz?
Yeah, I'll just say, hope everyone has a great holiday season and enjoys your time off with your family and friends. It's been a fun third year here on the Peace River Water Authority Board, and I look forward to working with all of you again in 2024.
Thank you. So I would say to the Seminoles, if they just would have did this next year, they would have been in. I believe they're moving to the 6-team playoff scenario. So unfortunately, they got too good too soon. Next year, it's another year. So, also, Mr. Coates, when we had our one-on-one, you said it's very casual here. I don't need a tie. It's no problem. You show up with a tie. In my county shirt.
I did say, if you wear a tie, please wear a Christmas tie.
Yeah, well, you did say that. You did. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Chair. Just Merry Christmas to everybody and Happy Holidays, and hope you have a wonderful New Year, and welcome the new Commissioner on the board.
Yep, pretty much same thing. Welcome board. Look forward to hanging out with you. You wasn't too vocal. If you get that way, I'll tell you. But I got tickled. We kept talking about these damn safety requirements, and it got me tickled at being a water party. My daughter is always telling these corny little jokes that she finds somewhere. I don't know where she comes up with them, but I thought it would be appropriate that she said there was two little fish swimming up the creek, and one of them hit a wall, turned around and looked at the other and said, "Damn." I want everybody to have a Merry Christmas. Thank y'all all for coming. Stick around, enjoy DeSoto County, spend some money, and then go home. Anyway, thank y'all. Is there anything else coming before the board? Any public comment? Okay, hearing none, we stand adjourned. Thank y'all.
Is there? I don't know, maybe.